So what I really like to do before all of that is I like to reiterate that we're here 100% for you guys. And what that means to me is I want you to feel like this is your panel. I want you to feel like if there's a question that's been burning, feel free to ask it. Just raise your hand. If we're talking about something that triggers something that you've been working on or inspires a question, you don't have to wait till the end, because I feel like sometimes we either forget or we get onto a new topic and you might not feel like it's relevant anymore. So just feel like we're one big happy family. I feel like you guys feel that way, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So if you have any questions at all, just throw them out there, or any comments or anything that we're not getting to that you want us to touch on, feel free to bring it up. So I'd like to say that, and we'll do intros. You guys ready?
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay, I'm Janice Davis. I'm a moderator for Wizard World and San Diego Comic-Con. I'm also a columnist for MMORPG.com. And I'm an author of a video game thriller called The Holder's Dominion. And I also do voiceover work, and I'm the founder of The Gamer in You, which is an online movement about bringing gamers and non-gamers together. So that's me.
Did I see that you're a hair model too?
Oh my gosh, don't bring that up. I do a little modeling cosplay on the side, but I don't like to advertise that because I get embarrassed. Okay, Carol, you go next.
Hi, I'm Carol. I'm very embarrassing. I'm a co-founder of Happy Badger Studio, which is a local game design team here in St. Louis. I'm the chairperson of the local chapter of the St. Louis International Game Developers Association, which means that I organize a lot of events for industry gatherings and industry kinds of events, like we were talking about game jams earlier, things like that. I just do a lot of community management on that side. I'm also one of the co-organizers of Pixel Pop Festival, which is St. Louis's celebration of games and game development in September. So that's pretty much it. I do all sorts of things as far as game design goes, because we're on a small indie team. So I've released about a dozen games from mobile to card games to web games, things like that. So right now we're currently on development on our first console title, which we're going to be releasing on PS4 and Steam next year. Yeah, it's called Snowbase.
Thank you for sharing, Seth.
Hey guys, my name is Seth Koster, and I am 1/3 of the indie studio Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Can we cut you in thirds, literally?
Yeah. We're a studio of 3 brothers, and 2 of us are here in St. Louis, and 1 is in Texas. And we've launched, I don't know, maybe 8 games, 4 of which are pretty major. We have over 4 million players. We are on iOS and Android. We're going to be branching over to PC and Mac pretty soon here with our next big game, which I will talk about at the end.
Yay, awesome. Ben.
I'm Ben Triola. I'm also a partner at Happy Badger Studio. Our third partner is actually in the front row, is Dana. We're a small studio. We're a team of 5, and so we all kind of do a lot of everything. So I tend to do a lot of the game design, a little bit of the programming, and occasionally some art. I also teach level design and history of video games at Webster University. And I'm also part of the Pixel Pop Festival in the fall.
Very cool. So the question I always get from a lot of people about the video game industry, especially how you got into design and why.
Yeah, well, so like I said, we do a lot of everything, but what draws me to design is the idea of being able to create an experience. So if you want to create kind of core mechanics of a game, if you have these ideas for what a game is and should be, how a player should feel when they're playing a game, things like that, that's kind of what tips you off into wanting to be a designer specifically. But I mean, I just kind of came into it from a just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks sort of perspective, and in our case, a lot of things stuck. So
wow.
Yeah, I mean.
I like that you said that you really wanted to create an experience.
Yeah.
Because as a writer, I want to create an experience for a reader.
Yeah.
So Seth, is that the kind of same thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big inspiration for getting into game dev came from when I was 17 years old. World of Warcraft came out. Woo. And I started playing it, and it just blew me away to the point where I started kind of feeling like my computer monitor was not necessarily an electronic device, but more of a window into another place. And it just kind of blew my mind that you can get a team of brilliant people together and they can create entire worlds with their minds. And then other people can go and hang out there. And And that just kind of stuck with me for a long time. It wasn't until 6 years later that I got involved in game dev. And for me, the path, I think it was probably similar to these guys, it was something that I'd always wanted to do, and so I just started doing it. I taught myself to code, and I started designing my own little small games and launching them. And through those small games, I got hired at a bigger studio, and then from there, my brothers and I set up as Butterscotch Shenanigans. So it pretty much just came from, I was inspired and wanted to do it, and just started doing it.
Interesting, that's awesome, okay?
Yeah, so I didn't actually play games hardly at all as a kid. I was kind of like in one of those households that was anti-video games, so I was kind of deprived.
Oh,
So what happened was when I got to an age of like making my own decisions, I really wanted to like see all that I'd missed, and so I started collecting games and played a lot of like Atari and NES and really analyzed those games. And what I liked about Atari games is they almost always boil down to just one mechanic. Every Atari game is like one mechanic, and so that's what interested me in game design, was creating mechanics that in and of themselves were fun, and you can build around that.
What are the avenues people can take if they are an aspiring video game designer? If they're still in school, high school or college, but they want to focus on that? Seth, I see you ready. You want to take it?
Yeah. What I always tell people who want to get involved in games, whether it's being a designer or an artist or a programmer or anything, is there's nothing stopping you from going home right now. Well, maybe you should stick around for the rest of the convention. But going home and just making games. For me, I was in law school at the time, and I had no programming background, no art background, no formal training in anything relating to this. And I just started making games as a hobby, and I soon discovered that this was something I wanted to do as a profession. So I just continued.
Sorry about the background.
So much to do. We've got artists, we've got celebrities, we've got cosplayers, we got what?
Yeah, I also wanted to.
Will that work? Yes. Okay.
I also wanted to piggyback on what Ben was saying about having limited screen time as a kid. We were only allowed 30 minutes of screen time a day. And if we wanted to watch a movie or something, we had to save it up and then cash it in, so 4 days of no screens. So I think that was also part of it. I grew up with a reverence for anything that had a screen on it as a sacred thing, So. But anyway, aside that.
As far as avenues for getting involved, so there's so many aspects to game development, right? So there's programming, there's art, there's testing, there's narrative design, there's actual core mechanic design. So any of those things that sticks out to you, chase that, but do all the rest also. So sort of like what Seth said, I mean, just go start making games. There are so many resources out there to let you just start, regardless of your skill set, regardless of your knowledge. You can start out at zero, start making games, and then discover that there's another avenue or another possibility that you'd like to pursue.
Let's say that someone wants just some names of some programs that they should look at.
So, yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you that we at Happy Badger Studio have used GameSalad and Unity. GameSalad is good for 2D, Unity is good for 3D, Stencil is another good 2D one, and Seth.
I'm a big advocate for Game Maker Studio, which is for Windows. So if you're on Mac, you gotta use GameSalad, I think.
Yep.
But that's what I learned to code in, and we still develop all of our commercial games in Game Maker Studio. It's very easy to learn. It has a drag and drop interface even, so if you can't write a single line of code, you can still start slapping things together. And we also do all of our art in a free vector graphics program called Inkscape, which is a lot like Adobe Illustrator, but better and free. So,
Ben, are there any schools or?
Well, I mean, if you're a little scared of coding, like you've never done code before, I think I recommend GameSalad is the best place to start, because it's totally, there's no code, it's drag and drop. All the tutorials are made by like a 13-year-old, so like if you can figure it out, you can figure it out. And I think that's really very cool if you're really interested in game design, like mechanics design, or other aspects of games, art and that kind of thing, because the coding side is very minimal. On the flip side, some people are programmers first and then they want to get into games, and I think in that case, something like Game Maker or Unity is a really strong, powerful tool where you can actually use your coding knowledge and leverage it.
I've been told numerous times that there are so many opportunities to join a smaller studio or independent studio because there are so many people that do so many jobs. There's basically always something to do. You always need help with something, right? So as indie developers and founders of studios, do you look for certain things on resumes or people that do ping you for opportunities to start their resume, to start their credits basically? Do you look for a certain school or programming classes? Go ahead.
We look for passion.
Yeah.
Like that is the number one. Passion and personality go a really long way. And if you can show that you're self-motivated and that you have made things, we value that much higher than you went to a certain game school or something like that.
Neither of our employees have actually been to college, but both of them are extraordinarily talented and actually started learning programming on their own in their early teens, and that is how they are where they are. And I think that's.
Not down college.
No, I mean, like, not to put down college, but to build up self-motivation. And like the idea of, like, if you work in an indie studio, you have to be motivated on your own. Like, we don't have time to manage you, so you have to manage yourself, basically. So if you can show that you can make a game by yourself, then you're going to be a lot more useful on a team, because that means that you're self-driven.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I think for us, we have not hired anybody.
Be a cost your brother.
It's sort of a family business, so we could adopt it. Whenever we talk to people who are looking for jobs in the games industry, we say just start making games. I think it's a lot like being a writer or an artist or a musician. If you were applying for a job as an illustrator and you had no portfolio, if you had nothing that you had created to point to, nobody would hire you, right? But if you had a degree that said that you're an artist, still nobody would hire you. So the same thing goes with games. If you show that you can make games and that you'll take the time and the initiative to do it on your own, then you'll get hired.
I always hear day in and day out this gem that I just hold on to, and it says, do the job that you want now, or do the job you're
you don't need
inspiring
anybody's
to.
permission.
Yeah.
You just do it.
Right. So for writing for games, I can speak to that I've been told so many times, or asked so many times, how, if I want to be a writer in designing for video games, how would I go about that? And the best thing is to have the samples. Having samples of a weapon that you created for a sci-fi game or for a FPS game like Call of Duty. Having an environment description that could be placed in Final Fantasy. Having a species that you come up with, that could go into a fantasy world. And then you're able to bring this resume, this portfolio of concept art, if you're an artist, or of your writing samples, and you can say, this is my style, this is my niche, this is how I would approach upcoming sequel to this game, especially if you want to work at a specific company, researching what kind of games they do, what their genres are, and then writing those samples for those genres. You can come up and say, this is what I would do for a sequel for your next game, in a really polite, amiable way, because you don't want to be like, hey, this sequel sucked, and so I want to change this and this, and
That interview technique.
Yeah, for sure. So for the writing side of it, I can definitely say that is what works for me.
Yeah,
And for
I'll
design,
also say, I used to work at a company called Simutronics here in St. Louis. They're a large studio, about 25 people, and resumes came in the door all the time. And there was one I was there for 8 months, there was one resume that just really stood out, which was for a 3D artist, and his resume was, it was a beautifully printed fold out where the inside was a picture of him sitting in his desk inside of this beautiful 3D rendered environment that he had created, and then on the front of it was it was like a character sheet from an RPG with him as a 3D character, and instead of just saying, I can use ZBrush, he had ZBrush as a weapon on his character, and all the items had tooltips, and each one was a description of some skill that he had.
that is so cool.
So that just blew me away. And if you do something like that, then obviously, you get noticed. So
Absolutely. So one of the things that we're always asked is, what are the challenges, what are the day-to-day expectations for working in design that maybe we all don't know about? Maybe there are speed bumps that you guys encounter every day as designers that you could enlighten us on, just so we're aware, if we want to get into this industry, what those could be.
Yeah, it really takes a lot of trial and error and willingness to fail, because there's going to be a lot of failure in design, and that's how you learn and that's how you make your game better. It's really difficult to fine-tune it without putting it in people's hands, and that's a really scary thing. But it's worth it and it's necessary. So that's one of the big challenges that I see a lot of people, especially when they're just starting out, they don't want to show their game to people because they're afraid of how they're going to react. But then when they're finished with it and they've never shown it to somebody and they realize that nobody can figure out how to get past the first level, that's a problem.
Just to piggyback off that for writing, I feel like that is so true, where so many of us writers, we're artists, at heart, and we live sometimes in solitary confinement, chained to our desks, typing alone, and we are afraid to share it, the fear of failure.
Yeah.
But collaboration is so important. I completely agree. Seth and Ben?
For me, I think the biggest challenge is coming to grips with the fact that if you're trying to make games for a living, you don't always get to make the game that you want to make. You have to make a living, which means sometimes you have to compromise your vision, and there's always a struggle of how far do you have to compromise before you don't feel good about the game anymore and don't want to be working on it. So we make mobile games, and as some of you may know, mobile games are notorious for being these money-grabbing, free-to-play, almost slot machines.
He knew. He made the money in motion. That was amazing. You knew what he was going to say.
And we've tried to stay as far away from that as we can, but at the same time, there's a reason why 493 out of the top 500 mobile games are exactly that thing. And it's because people just don't like to buy things on mobile. So we have to figure out how do we make a living in a place where everybody wants the thing we make, but nobody wants to pay for it. So we have to constantly battle that and try to figure out how to adapt our game design and make everything work so that we can still function as a business and keep doing the thing that we love. So it's tough.
It's very interesting. Answer.
My brother works in a studio, and he said along with that, one of the complications is security, because with people buying things and paying into a game, losing that in a game, such an RPG or something, can be very real for the person spending the money. And he said one of the challenges for him has been actually general security. I'm not supposed to tell his name to some people because
So just so everyone can hear, what he was saying is there's a concern with development with security. I don't know if you're referring to money transactions in the game or real money transactions.
Transactions of actual money paying for in-game items. Sometimes people.
Another aspect of that is piracy too, which these guys have dealt a lot with piracy.
Through our analytics, we found that with our first game we launched, which was a paid game, 97% of our players were pirates. And when we switched over to a free type of game with in-app purchases, over 80% of our transactions were fraudulent. So it's always a battle. There's also a question of would those people have even bought anything anyways? Probably not. I don't know, but you can't know. So.
Awesome. Anything else?
Yeah. So just to add to, again, this is you're talking about what are the challenges of game design, and if you're coming from another aspect of software design, if you've done development or any kind of work where there's sort of a project cycle, you're used to sort of having like this spec, like here are the features that we want you to develop. And fun doesn't work like that. You can't just spec fun and be like, well, these are the features that will equal fun, and code it. If it was like that, game design would be a lot easier, but you kind of have to find the fun, which, as Carol said, means usually failing a lot.
Or just make a sequel.
And then I think the other really difficult thing that people don't think about when they're getting into game design is finishing something. That can be really hard because when you're first starting a game project, it's really fun. Like designing fun is fun, and designing games is really exciting. And there's this endorphin rush. And then when you're about like 2/3 of the way through, you're just really tired of working on it because the stuff you're doing at that point, it isn't exciting and fun. You're not learning new things and doing something innovative. You're just like fixing stuff and making it work right.
You're optimizing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
How can you make the characters move wherever you want?
The question is, how do you make characters move wherever you want them to?
That's what you do if you're a programmer. So if you pick up Game Maker Studio, for example,
Or Game Salad.
or Game Salad, any of these programs, there will be tutorials in there that'll teach you how to do all this kind of stuff.
So cool. I was told that from a designer that there are jobs in game design that are very solitary, where you're just told, if, let's say you're working on Call of Duty and you're just told from Activision, the umbrella, you know, go make these game assets. And day after day you go and you make this certain game asset for that game, and it's very repetitive. And a lot of people that you know, game designer would share his day-to-day, they were surprised. Like, wow, it sounds pretty boring. You just do the same thing over and over. You're just churning out these game assets. And then from another designer, he said, you know, in our studio, it's completely different. You know, we wear many hats, like you were kind of describing. So for anybody wondering, I prefer to work alone, I prefer to work with a group. Are there various level designs that require collaboration, but then there are also some that you can, you know, work your alone and submit your work?
A lot of it depends on your personality. If you're the kind of person, like some people just want to be in the game design industry and they know they can be good at this one thing. And so I think for that person, working at a big AAA company makes a lot of sense because you can hone your skill, be really good at that one thing, and still be part of this amazing industry. For other people, usually for people like us that are independent, that's just never satisfying. Like, I always have to work on something different, and if I had to do the same thing, like even 3 days in a row, I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. I gotta change gears.
Yeah, I talked to a guy from a major studio who his job was to create 2D animated renderings of all of the shadows for all the character animations for every character in the game. And so for 3 years,
Wow.
he drew pictures of shadows, and that was his life. So that you can go that deep into the rabbit hole if you
Wow.
want.
And with the lighting too, the smallest point of light coming from this direction, you can just
Now
do
you
that
got
over
your
and
shadow.
over. And,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, more likely than not, the larger the studio you work for, the less broad your day-to-day work is going to be. So if you want to do everything on your own, if you want to be completely by yourself and never have to deal with a team, you can totally do that. That makes you an independent developer. You can make a game completely by yourself, and that's a really satisfying thing, but it's also really difficult. Or you can work with a small team, the way that we do, and that's also very satisfying, and it's really cool to be able to riff off of people. But when you're working with a big studio, that's when you're getting very direct tasks, which is really great for some people because, like they said, you just want to focus on one specific thing, and that's awesome because you can be the absolute best at that one specific thing. But that means you're never ever going to be able to do this other specific thing if you wanted to, unless you changed your entire career path.
and I think it's interesting too that the designer that was on this topic last time, who was from a big studio, did say that they hire differently. So I think that's interesting. Just when you think about getting into the design industry, when you're applying at different places, you know, they really mentioned passion and your vision, your goal, how you work with the team, and that's what they look at first. And then at the bigger studio, he did say they do look at where you went to school, like Full Sail, I think he said, for animation. I can't remember exactly, but
The NYU Game Center is really popular for design itself, yeah.
yeah. So
I
think
think
that's
the more specific the job is, the more likely it is that very specific credentials are going to be required.
And he said, so for the bigger studio, they would look at a lighter's DeviantArt, I believe, and see how he would light different scenes. And they hired, you know, who they feel was one of the best color correct or, you know, lighters in that they could find. So I think that was interesting that you all three said you can be great or find your niche and do that one thing over and over, the shadows or the lighting, if that's your passion, or if you want to do a more broad topic, you can apply it for smaller. Does that kind of wrap up everything?
I mean, if you want to specialize and you want to work for like a big AAA company, I think maybe game school could make sense. But if you want to be an independent, or even if you just want to have a broader range of skills, I take issue with a lot of game colleges and game schools because the ones that I've talked to, the students I've talked to, the ones I've visited, their approach is very much skill first, and then we put it all together and make a game. And I think it should be completely opposite. I think you should go in, make a game, and then figure out what skill you want to hone.
It's going to be a bad game because you have no skills, but that's okay.
Right, but then you can learn from that failure. Like, I don't think they promote failing early as much as they should. I've talked to professors at game schools, and I'm like, so how often do you jam with your students? They're like, oh, well, there's a local jam, but we don't really go to it. I'm like, that's like the best opportunity your students have.
For context, Game Jam is a 2-day game development event where everybody just forms teams and they create a game in 48 hours. And it's really intense and it's really amazing and it's super formative if that's the kind of career that you want to go into, because you realize how easy it is to fail quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a saying, I might be making this up, there's a saying about painting maybe, that you have 1,000 terrible paintings in you. So you have to just get them out of the way before you start making a good one. And the same thing applies with just about anything, but in particular it also applies to games. So if you go to a game school and you learn all the skills necessary to make a game, but you haven't started down your path of making 1,000 terrible games, you've still got a long way to go before you're making anything good.
Yes,
So.
sir.
Can you tell us about all the upcoming game jams in the city?
Oh, absolutely. We'll do that right at the end, just so I can get this last. There's one more thing that we have to go over. As a designer, how do you hold on to a game's vision? Like the original vision for the game. Like a panelist described how World of Tanks, I believe, he said, the original vision for the game was when you get to be in the armored tank, you know, you're OP, that's the point of the game. But through, I believe designers feel a lot of pressure when the forums start, you know, blowing up where, you know, some players are saying, this is OP or this is, you know, needs something pumped up, and then you have the designer's original vision of a game that they wanted a certain, you know, element to this design. So how working in a group, if you're the programmer, someone else is the writer, you were saying the artist, there's all these different avenues, how do you hold on to that? The game's original vision.
So I think there's a bit of give and take with that. So I mean, there's an element of what we do when we create a game is we decide what the core, like the core theory behind the game is, and we write it down. We pick, what is it, 3 core, what do we call them?
Columns.
Core columns, where we basically say the game is this, and this, and this. Pillars, that's more accurate. So we say the game is these 3 things. And then if we ever need to make a design decision and it doesn't fall into one of those 3 things, then we know it's the wrong design decision. And so when we take it to playtest and we start getting feedback from playtesters, from everyday people, just like you guys playing our games, taking a look and giving us, you know, ideas like, I really want it to be OP, and it's like, no, I don't want it to be OP, because the second column is like, you're going to feel weak, you know, that sort of thing. Like this is, you have to make sure that you cater to your players while still maintaining what you have decided. And I think just writing down specifically what you want the game to be is a really good start.
Yeah, so for us, we kind of take a weird approach at our studio. We don't design anything, which is weird that I'm on a panel about game design.
Wait a second, he tricked me.
I did not misrepresent anything. We use kind of a game jam approach where we start with sort of a core concept and we just we come up with something that sounds fun, and we create a prototype of it and try it out. And if it is fun, then we just keep doing stuff to it. And if something turns out to not be fun, we just take that thing out. So
It's just designed by trial by fire.
It's iteration.
It has to be great.
Yeah, and so for us, our vision of the game tends to be very dynamic and flexible, and it's always trending towards something, but whatever that thing is may change on a day-to-day basis. And then at a certain point, we kind of figure out what the game is trying to be, and then we just sort of carry it the rest of the way.
So I'm going to paraphrase people that are smarter than me. If anyone's played Sword and Sorcery, it's a great mobile game. And one of the things I learned from those guys talking at GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference, and we've taken this into our own studio, they said that your team, and this works great for small teams, maybe not so much for big teams, but your team has to understand fully and internalize what is the core of your game, what makes your game your game. And that's, you know, when we're working on Smugglecraft, I think our team, we know what Smugglecraft is, and so when we talk about a new feature, we might debate this or that, but at the end of the day, we kind of look at it and we say, well, is that thing Smugglecraft? Does it make sense in our world that we've created? And we can throw a lot of stuff out the door just by passing that test or not passing that test. And then the other thing that I'll paraphrase is Jonathan Blow said something like, when a game design is good, you don't have to go digging for gold nuggets. And what he means by gold nuggets is like an added feature that just makes total sense for the game. Like this just meshes with the game perfectly. You don't have to dig for those things. If the game design is good, they're just all sitting there in the ground and you just have to go pick them up. And that's like really, really fun when that happens. When your game, the core of your game, the design of your game is so fleshed out in your mind that you just start coming up with stuff, and then it's just a matter of deciding what to put in and what not to put in. But the ideas are just all scattered right there.
And that totally speaks to my heart, because I feel like in any industry that any of us go into, we're always going to be trolled or flamed or yelled at in some way. Someone's always going to be asking us to compromise. Like I like how you all described the core, your pillars, the core of the vision. That happened to me with my novel. One of the publishers wanted to change the protagonist from a female to a male, because they said male gamers aren't going to like the female protagonist. I know. They're way behind. The literary industry has to catch up with the current gaming industry. But what you guys said is knowing that was going against the core vision that I had to bring that together. There is that ebb and flow where where you can give sometimes, but then you can't, right?
Well, I think you can also, as a designer, you can just approach it from the sense that if you have something really cool that you want to put out into the world, almost everyone is going to not like it that much. Because even if you get 1 billion players, that means 6/7 of the world doesn't give a crap about it. So you just make the games for the people who are going to like the games that you make, and if people don't like it, they just don't have to play it.
You should first and foremost make games that you want to play, and to some extent, who cares if anyone else likes it? Now we're trying to make money, like Seth said, that's a challenge. But we make mobile games that we love, and literally like 100 people have downloaded it. And we're like, this is like a really fun game.
Yeah.
Something that's kind of interesting about the current game that we're working on, the console title. So we're getting a lot of eyes on this because we're working with Sony on it, and so we've got Sony social media filtering into our game, and so that means we're getting more and more people talking about it. And we're seeing how polarizing just the simple game is. Just announcing the game has people celebrating from their rooftops and telling us that we should die. And it's just like, it's kind of exciting in that it makes people feel that passionate. Like even if you hate it that much, that means they care about it. Like that's cool.
I'm totally excited that we've got haters. Like if we put a video out there and just like every comment was positive, I'd be like, oh man, we must be making something that's like super vanilla if everyone likes it. I'm stoked that we've got like people that are just raging, how can you make this game? Why would you call it snow crap? I hate this.
Window!
Yes, we've done something that has moved people in some way.
Wow, that's really interesting that you said it was polarizingly different.
Yeah, it is.
And what's awesome is like, of course the key is just like, look at the comments for Gamer, but after that, just don't even look and do not respond. But what we have is the people that are super excited about the game, they'll go in there and fight our battles for us. We don't have to say anything. They'll be like, what's wrong with you? You don't know anything about games. This is great. Like, that's cool. We didn't ask you to do that. But people are so passionate for the game that they're upset that people hate it. It's weird.
So just to recap, can you guys tell us how, if someone out here right now wants to go and make a game, and they want to get it this is a 3-parter, so they want to make a game, they want to get it onto iTunes or onto a platform that someone can download it, and they want to make some money. So it's a 3-part question. Recap what programs they need to learn and download, how you get it onto the platform to sell, and then if they can make money at it.
I can take that one. I'll just say what our process is. So we use Game Maker Studio to do all of our programming. We use Inkscape for all of our art stuff. We distribute on iTunes and Google Play. Each of those, iTunes, you simply pay $100 a year, and congratulations, you're a developer for iTunes. On Google Play, it's even more difficult. It's $25. So.
But it's a one-time fee, right?
Oh no, that's annual.
Oh, it is.
So you got to pony up a lot of cash every year.
That was for which one? $25?
Google Play. Yeah. So if you want to make mobile games, you can do that. And As far as getting it put up there, iTunes has a review process. You submit your game, they'll play through it. If it's broken, vulgar, or a virus, they'll decline it. They'll also sometimes decline things if it violates their terms of use and stuff like that. You just gotta be careful going in. But if they reject it, you can just fix it and resubmit. So it's very easy to get your game out there in front of people. As far as making money on it,
good luck.
Yeah.
Godspeed.
Yeah, I mean it's when we first got into making games 2 years ago, there were about 500 mobile games coming out a week on iTunes. Now there are 3,500. So the toughest thing is not necessarily, it kind of comes hand in hand with making money, but it's getting noticed. If you are one of 3,500 games, who's going to see it? Who's going to see your game and who's going to play it? So you have to actually spend a lot of time on promotion. If you ever want people to buy your game or even play it, you have to be very loud, and you have to go out there and reach out to people and try to get them talking about your game, and just promote the crap out of it.
Yeah, hustle, and PR. So PR comes very difficult, very hard to a lot of indies because by nature we're kind of introverted, and so it's really hard to go out there and be like, hey, my game is awesome, and you should write about it, and you should buy it, and you should play it, and it's awesome.
For the first time with no experience, only going to invest 3 years doing it, and then you're going to figure out that you should have done the 2-week game instead.
Coming back to the 1,000 terrible games idea, if you spend 3 years on your first game, you've still got a lot more to go before anybody wants to play what you're making. So don't do that. It's terrible.
We are almost out of time, so real quick, we're going to let everyone know what we're working on. Then we're going to talk about the game jams that you wanted to know the information on, and then we'll go to yours, okay? So real quick, just Ben, tell us where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, so I run the Happy Badgers Twitter, so it's at Happy Badgers. If you want to follow me personally, it's at Ben Triola. And our team right now is working on Slumpcraft is our main push. So we're on Steam Greenlight right now. If you have Steam, we'd love you to go in there and give us a vote.
Seth.
I can be found on Twitter. At this company, we all use the same account. It's at bscotchshenanigans.
Nice.
Our company name is too long to put on anything, so include Twitter. Our website is butterscotch-shenanigans.com, and we have a contact form there as well. And if anybody wants to get advice on how to get started making games or whatever, we're always willing to help people out and point people in the right direction, give feedback, anything. So feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to help.
So I'm on Twitter at Carol Mertz. So I also run the IGDA website and Twitter, and the IGDA, like I said, is the International Game Developers Association. We have one in St. Louis, and we have a lot of industry events. So if you're ever interested in coming to industry events, networking with other local indie devs, check out the website. It's igdastl.org. And also Pixel Pop Festival is pixelpopfestival.com.
I feel like we somehow maybe missed a huge piece of advice, which is come out to community stuff. Don't be in a silo. Come meet other game developers, because you're going to learn a lot from meeting other people and try to learn from their failures, so you can have maybe fewer than 1,000 failures.
Hugely important.
I really like that because the other panels do the same thing. Networking, coming, showing your portfolios to panelists who are already working in the industry that you want to work in. And then there you have a meet and greet right there. You get your business cards switched and swapped and
Yes.
I'll tell you, if we were making Slumpcraft in a silo, it would not be what it is, because we had great advice from people like Seth and people like Rob in the front row. These guys are our friends and our peers, and they're willing to give us really hard critiques, and that's what we need.
Awesome, very cool. And I'm Janice Davis. You can follow me, as they said, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. And we were going to address the game jams.
So, yes, game jams happen every year without fail annually. The Global Game Jam is in January. It's usually the last weekend of January. And typically in St. Louis, it's at UMSL. We haven't scheduled it for sure yet this coming year, but expect that probably. But like I said, keep your eye on igdastl.org. We also are hoping to have what we've lovingly called a scatter jam this fall, where you get together in one place, you get the theme of the game, and then you go with your own teams and make your games in your own place. and then you come back 2 days later and present your games, which is really great. Last year we had like 30 games or something like that made in a weekend, which is really rad. And so there's usually more, there may or may not be coming up. We haven't confirmed them yet, I'm sorry. But keep your eye on IGPASTL.org, basically.
Very cool. And sir, did you have a question?
Yeah, you guys mentioned Let's Players. Do you guys ever try to reach out to Let's Players to like get them to play your games?
Yeah, it's a good thing to do.
Let's play.
Let's Players.
I just want to make sure everyone can hear.
Yes. Oh, okay. So he wanted to know if we reach out to YouTubers and Let's Players as far as promotion goes. And yes, actually, pixelprospector.com is a really great resource for indie developers, and they actually have a huge list of Let's Players on their website that you can basically take that contact information and then email them. Chances are not good that they'll actually read the email, but you can try.
You should try.
Yeah, you should try.
Yes, sir.
You guys play your games on YouTube.
Do you guys play your games on YouTube? That was the question.
Yes.
Where can they watch your games? What YouTube channel?
Our channel is, I think it's just Butterscotch Shenanigans. So yeah, if you look up our company name on YouTube, you'll find our YouTube channel. We often make game jam games, and then we will play them as sort of a group let's play with some commentary about sort of the inspiration that went into it and that kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, so
You
we
guys
do a
also
lot of that.
Twitch, right?
We do have Twitch. We haven't been on there much lately, but every now and then we'll stream development or something. At one point last year, we did every Monday for 5 weeks. We made a game in 10 hours, and we streamed that on Twitch, so people could watch the process.
That's pretty cool. Do that again sometime. I mean, not to put pressure on you, but that would be cool. Yes, sir.
How do you guys feel about like things like Life is Strange?
I love Life is
The
Strange.
question was, how do you guys feel about Life is Strange?
Yes, so I'm really into narrative games. I'm my primary role in our current game is the narrative designer, so I'm really into Life is Strange. I just started playing Sunset by Tale of Tales. Things like that really excite me because it's different. It's something unique to the game's landscape as a whole, and I get really excited when there are games that are unique to the game's landscape as a whole.
Yeah, that just kind of comes back to the idea of there's something for everyone, and if people don't like it, they just don't have to play it. And so the great thing about that is there can be something that exists for every particular interest out there. So any game that's even remotely different has an audience.
Very cool. We have 1 minute, kind of. We're almost out of time. If there's any last questions, I take one more. Before I let you guys go, we have more video game panels this weekend. Awesome panels. Carol's on more panels. Seth and Ben may or may not be on more. Okay. Well, we do have more panels on video games. Be there. Fatality, who's a professional gamer, is doing an esports panel with me tomorrow, talking all about esports and pro gaming and Twitch. So definitely check that out, and more video game panels about getting into the career and being impactful, all kinds of good stuff. So check out programming. Drink and Draw tonight is a really cool Wizard World event where you can go, and I believe they have snacks complimentary and drinks, not alcoholic, but you can buy alcoholic drinks there. And so just check that out. And then Critical Hit is a really cool video game band performing tomorrow night. And lastly, I just want to give a round of applause to my panelists and to you guys. Thank you so much for coming.